Good morning, ladies and gents. And morning it is. It is 7:05 a.m. For people like engineers, this tends to be a forbidden hour, but for some of us who are crazy enough to be up, it's also time to make games. Specifically, we're going to work on stacking inventory and figuring out how we're going to start putting in instances of objects that are modified as opposed to right now everything's just definitions. You can't really make changes to any of it without changing the underlying structure. So it's pretty simple for us to just say, well, we need a mechanism to either instantiate an object and make a copy, or the other thing we might be able to do is, if we don't want to make copies of things, we could also go so far as to maybe make modifiers on the definition. I'm still trying to think of a good way to go about that. So that's not going to be today. Today we're going to start with stacking items and giving players a near infinite amount of inventory space. Because inventory is actually going to be based on weight, not on a number of slots in your inventory. I know a lot of people like slot-based systems. Slot-based systems can be really nice for a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I kind of like a weight-based system, personally. At least, I wanted to start down that path, and have the ability to do that myself if I wanted. I may not keep it in the end, but I think for now it would be a good addition to the game. So, to dive right in, first off, our scripts, we need to change somewhat fundamentally how our inventory is stored inside of a character. Specifically, right now it goes backpack items and then equipped slots are underneath it. That's actually not the greatest way to do it, because now you have a limited number of inventory slots. If your backpack is at the beginning of the array and everything else just kind of comes after, it's a little bit difficult to effectively have an array that is going to be correctly sized, and it's also going to be difficult to have one that can expand and still fit things in the right place. So, let's see here. How do we want to do this? So, step one, max stack size needs to get added to items, and I'm going to attach a range to this and say 999 is kind of a maximum here. And actually, 1 should be a minimum max size. Remember, we need to handle the fact that there can't be 0 items in a stack, ever. Otherwise, the item just isn't in your inventory, and that's that. Yeah, Executron saying, if there's a lot of loot, yeah, weight-based system would be less tedious, and that is the point. If I want to have lots of loot, loot is very fun. It's a big part of RPGs. It's part of the draw for it in some ways. And so, because of that, I want to make sure that players can collect loot, that the loot impairs the characters correctly, and to some end, that you can't just go around and pick up everything without consequences. Or at least, if you don't have a fighter who has an absurd amount of strength, there will be consequences. Okay. So item stack size comes first, and then weight will come after, because I'd like to be able to stack items first. So not only do we have a stack size, but now we have to start differentiating between definition and instance of an object. Because right now, scriptable objects are great definitions. You essentially say, look, here's an item, here's its stats, here's all the information you need to know. The problem is, if we need to make modifications to that, any modification to the item is going to start making modifications to all the items in the game. So we can't obviously do that. So we need to essentially separate an item into 2 parts. We have the scriptable object definition, And then we're going to have an object instance, which is the actual object, that can have things attached to it, such as we can have modifications attached to it. So when we talk about like enchanting items, or if we talk about things that can only be used a certain number of times, or if they degrade over time. If armor has durability, durability would be something that goes on the instance, not on the definition. So all that information is what would end up on the instance. Also, if we do item instances, we can let players name their weapons eventually, which would be kind of cool. Excuse the sniffles. For some reason, my nose this morning is just completely unhappy with how I've been treating it, and it's in a bit of a rebellion. So, okay. Let's just double check. If I look at all my item instances, these... Okay, so health potions, let's say you can stack those in the 99s. Oh, yeah, whatever. 999s. And that number might change. Versus things like daggers and swords should only honestly be at 1. Okay, so now we've told it you can stack things. Well, we've put in a variable that says how much it can stack things. We need to tell it how it would stack something still. And this is going to be where things get a little more interesting, specifically because now we have to do that split I was talking about. So here is our character. First off, where's your inventory character? Oh, player character is what I should be looking at, actually. So if we look at the inventory slots and how that's set up, right now the inventory system is an array of item definitions. That's not quite what we want, at least not anymore. So let's see here. Okay, so inventory slots can't open. So we need some kind of class that can handle item references. And I'm kind of thinking, because I'm looking at what I have so far in terms of actual item definitions, right? The way in which I subclass off of inventory item. And I'm thinking that what I should do is call these definitions and then split off and make more classes. As much as I kind of hate to, that would be an instance of an item. That, or I'm thinking that maybe I could just do a generic class that can handle whatever's passed into it. That might be the best way to handle this. Let's see here. I already have so many item scripts, it feels kind of silly to create more, but sometimes that's what you gotta do. So let's see, this would be this would be an item instance. I'm just gonna keep using that name until I either come up with something better or we ship the game. Which is pretty much the case with anything I do. So obviously we have the item definition. Executron, why not make an array of item references? That's kind of what I'm looking to do, pretty much. Yeah, Lemony, it is definitely earlier in the morning than usual. I have a ride to catch this morning with a girlfriend on the way to work, and so that means I have to be up extra early if I want to stream today. And I've had so many ideas bumping around in my head. My weekend was so busy I didn't get to stream. And so I've had all these ideas bouncing around and I wanted to take care of them. So here I am doing such a thing. So here's the stack size. That's the easiest way to handle this, right? We've got the item definition and then we've got how many are in that definition. So that is a pretty straightforward thing to do. Also, I'm trying to think of other things that could go in this item instance, because we are going to have to hold this stuff eventually. Sorry, just close that for a moment because it was being opened bizarrely by Visual Studio. Wanted to make sure everything was okay there. So the player character now holds not just an item instance array, but we actually need to make this resizable. Currently, if you attempt to change the size of the array, that's kind of painful, and we don't really want to be doing that often. So I'm going to make these into lists. And I'm still going to keep the size here at the maximum size, so we at least always have a slot for everything that exists. So the inventory slots should essentially always be at minimum this long. And then after that, I don't really care after that. So let's see here. There's our spell list. Inventory slots, yeah. The other thing to keep in mind is that if we look at how equip slots are handled, it's actually backwards right now. So you'll notice the backpack is at the beginning and only has a certain amount of slots attached to it. First off, I'm going to throw this backpack size out because backpack size should now technically be infinite. We might want a backpack maximum size, but we'll futz with that later. If any players start getting an absurdly large inventory, it honestly should start weighing their character down and causing them trouble. So I'm not going to dive into that too quickly. So what we're going to do is we're going to shift the backpack to the end. Currently, backpack was at the beginning. Now, backpack is this point. And what I'm essentially just going to say is, hey, if you've hit backpack or past it, the item is in the backpack. So you've got all the equip slots in one section of your list, and then everything beneath it is just going to be backpack slots. So if I wanted to start searching in the list for everything in the backpack slots, I just start there and I go down. It makes my life really easy, and I continue to not have to fight with it, really. I will have to mess with a bunch of arrays and change around how a lot of these items are handled. Not the worst thing in the world. You just have to deal with things. For instance, create item UI used to use the definition. We now have to use instance instead. The cool thing here is that by using instance, it'll allow us to customize this further. So let's go into this function. And this would be an item instance. There's that. Let's see. NPCs inventories should also be the same way. They should also be lists of inventory, or not inventory items, of item reference, item instances. Just so that when we go to do trading, we're not passing weird objects back and forth, that we always handle instances and instances being passed back and forth. What? No. That's stupid. Visual Studio has some really dumb ideas about when it thinks I'm refactoring and when it thinks I'm doing other things. So many places where before we just used the inventory item, we're now actually passing more information around. So, okay, here's kind of the first case where things get a little bizarre. You'll note we have an item reference and we're attempting to call a function on the definition. It's not hard, we just have to say item definition. I'm actually just going to call that definition. Because there shouldn't really be any other definitions held within the item instance. I've been simplifying a lot of my variable names recently, if only because I find that I'm getting a little too verbose at times. And it's easier for me to kind of go overboard on that. And so I want to make sure that everything I do in terms of handling a lot of this gets done correctly and it's still readable. And if the lines are shorter and more compact, it's easier for me to read. Okay. Why are you guys complaining? Okay, set inventory function should actually not take inventory items. It should now take item instances. And the set inventory slot function, wherever that has gone. Oh, that's inside character. Okay. Which, by character, I mean player character. So many windows open at once. There's player character. Okay, set and get inventory slot obviously are wrong. So here's our item reference here. Or not reference, instance. My brain keeps wanting to say reference. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not. I'm a little worried about this. So I'm going to put a to-do there to come back later. Absolute 3. What do I have on my waffles? Usually just butter. I'm pretty vanilla in that respect. If the item is a consumable item. Okay. Here's where things get a little unfortunate. Where item it's difficult to have an item and then say, is it a consumable item? Where really what we mean to say is if the item's definition is a consumable item, I'm not a huge fan of that being kind of the way in which I interact with that class, but at the same time, there's so many other ways I could handle that interaction and do so poorly that I don't really want to do that if I can. Let's see here. So, for instance, here it says get inventory slot as a weapon item. Technically, it's the definition, but if we pull a null, we need to make sure that the null is taken care of first. So, what I'm going to do, this is our, here's our item instance. And we're not going to do the type coercion there. We're going to say, oh, by the way, if the, whoops, we have a weapon item, which is the right hand weapon, which equals, if the right hand instance isn't null, then we use the right hand instance dot definition as a weapon item, otherwise null. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of how how I'm forced to interact with these. Instead of making definition as a variable, why not derive item instance from inventory item as well? Do I lose anything from doing it that way? I had thought about that, and for some reason, I swear I came up with like a reason why I shouldn't have done it that way. So we have the item definition, the scriptable object that you generate inside Unity, right? So we have this nice little compact container that has all the information inside of it. And when I create scriptable objects, So So my reasoning here for not doing, and I'm thinking about this as I go, so I'm going to be kind of talking out loud, and I might say stupid things. But if I do the inheritance from the base object, a couple things needs to happen. One, one sec, I have an idea. I'm going to try breaking something out I haven't broken out in a while, and I definitely haven't done for this stream yet. I hope this even works. I haven't honestly tried it yet. Paint.net. Ugh. That's right. Suddenly I'm doing art, but not really. Sweet. Okay. So we have the base class, right? I have... Hello. Thank you. Okay, I apparently just have to hold for a while. I can't, like... Wow, I can't quickly write on this thing. Okay, maybe I can do so in a different product, such as, like, Paint. It feels silly that I'd have to go all the way to Paint to just... Yep, that's instant. Whatever. Okay, so... let's just make this huge so that I can deal with this all in one place. Okay, so... we're going to do a little architecture by artwork. So... here's the inventory item, right? This is our base for everything. This has very basic structure pieces in it, right? We've got name, we've got icon. I'm trying to think of what else, but you get the point, right? ... There's more attached here, but I don't care to go into it. Right now, what we're doing is we're saying that this is a thing, and from it we are going into stuff like, here's consumable item. And here's keys. Here's weapons, right? This is what it looks like currently. Now, what I could do, so what I'm currently doing is I'm essentially saying everything in this box, whatever the possibility is, I'm saying, here's an item instance. And it's going to have the definition, which is this thing. It's going to go right there. What's being suggested is that I somehow bring these back together by inheriting off of whatever I need. Now, the problem is, so we would end up with, because single inheritance, right? We'd end up with consumable instance with a key instance and with a weapon instance. Now, I'm not sure that's a terrible thing, because then we could test for the instance types, right? We know that every type... Yeah, we know that every type that we have would make it down to this eventually. I guess the other way to do it, just as like a test, would essentially be to genericize, to make a generic version of this, right? We'd have, and this is separate from this idea, right? We'd have an item instance T where T is an inventory item. Okay, so obviously the downside of this system that I'm going to mark in blue is that we need a new instance class for every definition type, right? And that's partially solved by doing this generic version. The problem with the generic version is that when I want to interact with the underlying type, I could interact with I could interact with the definition, right? We'd have the definition would still be an inventory item of some type, and I just have to coerce it to the right type. And if I really wanted to get cheap, I could just do type and tie it into the inventory item, I guess. I love how I hold it down and it gives me a little circle. It's kind of cool. But that said, okay, why not do that instead of what I'm doing right now with the instance type? Is there any reason not to? Because Luke made a really good point. Like, the composition definitely could do a better job than the more and more inheritance. Because when you start to get into these like crazy instance-based, or sorry, when you get into these crazy inherited structures, you kind of want to make sure that everything you do has a good point in reasoning. Otherwise, you do start to clutter your own code base and make it really hard to work with. So let's see here. Actually, I don't know why I just erased that. So I'm going to put in red what I currently have, right? We have, wow, that is a tiny brush suddenly. Thanks, Paint. So we have item instance, and I really hope you guys can actually read my handwriting. I know it's a bit tiny at times, but if we have the item instance and say, okay, here's our definition, and instead of instantiating, instead of inheriting, where definition is not part of it, but it's actually, the information is contained within the item here. So, okay, so here's some downsides for you, right? Item instance with the generic, this method here. First off, we're copying data unnecessarily. If you think of everything that's inside of this inventory item, that all gets copied when we go out to the item instance. Is that a terrible thing? Not particularly. It does mean all the information's in one place, right? If we look at something like having, not the weight, but let's say we're looking at an item and we want to look at the damage, and we have a custom damage. Well, now we have two ways to get custom damage, right? Damage could either be custom or it could be definition. And that's not terribly great, having multiple places to pull information from. I'm not a huge fan of that. Versus if we use item instance with a definition, or I'm sorry, other way around. I'm getting these like totally backwards in my head. Okay, so item instance says we copy data. If we copy data, that puts everything in the same place. We modify the instance and nothing changes in the prefabs that we've generated, which is great, right? That's good. We don't want to be generating extra information here. So this puts the information in one place. Versus here, we have this issue of custom versus definition. Now, obviously, it's not that bad to have to fight this, but it's actually still a pain. I kind of wish I had a better way to do this. Let's see. So item instance would have other things such as this would contain our stack size. It would contain what? Any other instance-based information, right? I'm trying to think of other things that could go in aside from like, okay, so we have a custom name that could be here. We have what else? I guess our enchantments would have to fit in here as well. In both cases, but the one upside of this is that we could say item instance. Well, so that's the one thing we can do here that we can't do in the item instance, right? If we want to do a type check using the C# is operator for the item instance, because it's a generic and because it would be inheriting probably from one of these base classes, right? Each of these would separately go out here, and that's getting messy, so I'm going to just remove those arrows. Because we're doing it like that, it would look like here's our inventory item, which then inherits down to, let's say, a weapon item for the weaponized stats, and then that would inherit into an item instance whose type is a weapon item. I knew that would get too long, but oh well. And the nice thing is this would evaluate to true when I ask it, is weapon item. Right? This would be, whoops, haha. Really? Okay, it's gonna keep doing that. I keep reading item as hem. Yeah, that's my handwriting for you. I-T instead of H. Oh well. That's kind of the upside. This is what I do like, is keeping this operator working for us so that we don't have to fight with it. Do we lose? Gosh darn it. Paint, stop doing that to me. The question is, do we lose anything when we do stuff like this? So yes, we copy information. Copying is more memory used, but not terrible, honestly. Put a little smiley face on this one. Is there anything else that goes on here? Item instance in terms of weapon item. Let's see. I see you guys have been talking in chat, and I know some of it is definitely relevant here. Nice handwriting. Why, thank you, Thinkulum. I took a lot of calligraphy stuff in high school, and so my handwriting is somewhat neat, but somewhat tiny because of it. Luke said the same exact thing I did about composition over inheritance. Great. Any item we want to use has to go through the inventory, true. And if we want to look at any stats on anything, that's going to have to go through the inventory. But a weapon on the floor isn't in an inventory, it's just an item. Also true, but an item on the floor should still have instance information attached to it. It shouldn't just be a definition sitting on the floor, which is why has the potential, which is what we're implying by deriving. Well, so Luke, it's not really pushing your design on me. It's a good suggestion, and I definitely understand what you're saying by keeping the two separate. And I'm, at least initially, I'm tempted to try and keep it out in a an item instance, but I'm starting to see more and more reasons why I think I actually do want to derive from it. It's one of those situations where the inheritance structure, I think we would benefit from inheriting off of it, instead of, well, actually, let's think about this a teensy bit more. So the only other problem I'm going to have here, I guess, no, in any case in which I need to use code from, whoops, that arrow is going to the wrong place. Any time I need to use information from the definition, all I have to do is cast it to the definition type. And then that would work. Because I'm trying to think of how would I access the information in the item instance based on this type here. And what that comes down to is I'd have to say, okay, I have item instance. I only accept item instance of weapons, first off. And then from there, I realize that might be really hard to read. Let's drop that a couple shades. So we have an item instance that is a weapon. That's better. And when we say an item instance is a weapon, say, how would we get to damage? Technically, we could say .damage. But the problem is, item instance itself doesn't understand that damage is one of its things. So what we'd have to do is say, as weapon, .damage, right? This would be how we would access the damage base on a weapon. That is an instance. Versus the other way would be, we'd say item.definition as a weapon. And we'd access the damage base this way. I really wish, obviously my perfect case is, I'd say, I know that we are a weapon type already, because weapon is part of this item instance, right? So to do that and then to say damage, actually, is that actually the case? Can I do this? I'm tempted to do it just to learn if that works or not. Because technically, once we have this right here, and I realize I'm not using a ton of colors again, once we have this here, that should specify what this item instance is owned by. And from there, we should be able to assume this. Now, because you and I can assume it, doesn't mean a compiler can. Let's try that. Real quick, worst case, I can always swap myself back, but I feel like this might be the right way to do this. Also, this is not a mono behavior at all. That definitely we don't want to be a mono behavior. Is that how I do it? Oh, and then I remove the definition. So here's one downside, right? We say inventory. How do we stash a bunch of inventory items in the same place? For instance, how do I have an NPC hold a collection of these? This is problem number one that I probably should have thought of, but didn't realize I should. At least by using a generic, that's going to cause me a lot of pain. Because we never want to say something like this when that's not the top level type. We never want to store definition when there's instance data attached to it somewhere else. Now we could do the non-generic interface or base class as Luke is suggesting, but then we kind of lose a lot of the upsides that we had going on before. One of the biggest upsides we had was the moment we had a non-generic interface, we have to do a lot more casting again. And we also, the moment we lose generic, we have to go back to this stuff here, right? We have to go back to having an instance per type. So we can't have class item instance that inherits from an inventory item because we lose this data here. Whoop. And it turns out without a pen, I can't actually draw things nicely. But we can't go from inventory item because we lose this information. Right? So that's not going to work. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to keep with my original thought. And I can just toss helpers in if I need helpers to handle type for me. Yeah, I think that's the way I'm going to go. Ba-dum-bum-bum. Dan on LAN, hello. Okay, there's our inventory item. Where's my item instance? Yeah, no, not generic. How am I drawing? I have a tablet. Do I program on a tablet? No. I would lose my mind trying to code on a tablet. No, I just have an art tablet sitting next to my computer that I rarely use, except for concept art from time to time. Alright, where was I? This NPC has item instances, that's great. For now, let's see. Can I do null propagation in Unity? I actually have no idea. Unity, are you going to complain about? Oh god, I have to... Okay, one thing at a time. Let's leave the null propagation here. I'll put null propagation in where I can, and then what we'll do is, if Unity complains about it, we'll come back later. Okay, back to doing our refactoring of this system. Yeah, enjoy your food, Executron. Thank you for the thoughts on whether I should be doing inheritance or not. I definitely will continue to poke at it, because I'm not sure if I quite have it perfectly how I want it, but definitely good comments. Something to always keep in mind when you're programming is whether you should be using composition versus inheritance. And it's kind of a difficult thing to nail down. There are cases like this where it can be incredibly difficult to figure out how you want to handle certain cases. Okay, we're at 12 errors. Item instance doesn't have an icon. That it does not. Its definition has an icon. And if the definition is a weapon type, then we can handle that. Also, the definition can set up tooltips and all that kind of cool shit. The trading inventory, let's see. Oh, interesting. Where did you come from? Cannot implicitly convert type inventory item to item instance. Okay, you are the problem, not the other way around. So item trade UI. You should be handling an item instance. And the on selection how do I switch to the tablet and stream so quickly? So I have the tablet set up as a mouse replacement. So every time I write, it swaps the mouse from my actual USB mouse to the tablet. And then when I move my mouse again, it swaps it back. It's pretty seamless and pretty nice. The only thing is that certain programs like Paint.net don't like it so well when I do stuff like that. So it's kind of a back and forth. Some programs like it, some kind of don't. And composition versus inheritance isn't something that's really taught in college or in school right up front. And so it's one of those things that you end up either learning on your own through just experience and bumping into it a lot, or the other thing you'll find is that you, as you're working, it's just a concept that kind of goes on in your mind as you figure out, okay, do I want to inherit from this? Or do I have a class that needs to contain an instance of this? In our case, I think we get enough winning pieces, for lack of better words, from using the having an instance of this object that it keeps us in a good spot. Let's see here. So inventory item equals trading PC.inventory slots. This should not be an inventory item. This should be an item instance. And if the item instance is null, we still skip it. We still have all kinds of stuff to handle here. Now, the one downside of this whole thing, the one downside is that now we can't actually put inventory items into somebody's inventory using the Unity UI. I have to find a new way to do that because that's going to be a pain in the ass. So that's one thing I'm going to have to figure out how to handle. There we go. Do that as... Oh, I see what it's asking about. Okay, right, this is another null propagation system that we need to handle. Wow, it seems like as fast as I resolve errors, it's just going to keep adding more to the system. Definition.onUse. And I'm definitely going to have to move some of this around. Yeah, I don't think Unity is using C#6, which means I don't think I get this null propagation as I would like to. I think I have to just do this by hand each time. So, there we go. Yeah, Unity is definitely not that far along. Yeah, it seriously, error whack-a-mole is the way to do it. Also, I need to put a fix me comment so I stop missing that. And since I just did this a moment ago, I can copy and paste this, because the code is exactly the same. Okay, maybe not exactly. It's close, though. There we go. Okay, so we've got our errors cleaned up. We've now swapped ourselves over to, for the most part, this system of inventory items. Now, some issues that are going to come up. Wow, Unity. Way to lose it. So one thing we will note, all of our player characters now, if I close skills, let's see here. Oh man, it's not even showing it anymore. You'll notice the inventory isn't even showing up in our list of things anymore, which is really, really unfortunate. God, I need to figure out a way now to handle this. Ah, man. This is unfortunate. Oh, shit. I also didn't look at the time until just now. It's 8 o'clock, guys. I gotta get going. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep thinking about this, and I'm gonna have to keep poking at it. I will be back tomorrow at my usual time, so usually I start right about now. But since today is Monday and not my usual Tuesday through Friday stream, I'm a little off by an hour. So thank you guys for joining me very much. Thank you for all the help with the thoughts on how I should be handling this, and I'm going to poke at this a little bit more, probably on my lunch break, just to see if I'm doing this right and make sure I'm not losing my mind. Inquire with some minds that are greater than my own and see if they think I'm doing the right thing as well. But thank you guys for joining me. I will be back on tomorrow bright and early at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're here for the first time or haven't done it yet, please hit the follow button in the corner, hit the little heart, and you'll see each time I come online, and you'll also get to just follow along, see how the game goes, and watch it make progress as it does. I see a couple of you have already joined. Thank you very much for those of you who have already followed today. Definitely helpful to have more folks along. The more people here able to help talk me through this, the better I can do. So, yeah, off to work. Off to go make more video games, because, some of us are crazy like that. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. If you miss any of the streams, don't worry. I'll be pushing all of these streams into my YouTube channel, which is linked below. So that's an easy way to catch up if you missed one, or if you just want to see how the heck I got here in the first place. That's the place to go. Thanks again, guys, and have a great day. Take care.